Today. There we go. Looks like the meeting has been recorded now. I know there was a few questions that came in the beginning. Yes, this is being recorded, as you can see. It will be posted on our Regenerate New York webpage. Feel free to put any questions you have in. I can't see them as it currently stands. I might be able to change that just to keep an eye on things. Hopefully I don't lose the slide. But what we'll do is at the very end, we'll go back through some of the questions and we'll see. I'm getting an audio is bad. Can I get a confirmation from one of my hosts that my audio is looking good?
Good. Sounds good
Okay.
to me. If
Okay.
anybody needs help, they can give us a call at 518-402-8005.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so and then the last thing I was going to say is in the comment or the chat window, you can select who to send it to. So if you have a question but just a little nervous to post it in the full group, feel free to send it to just one of the panelists, and we will be the only ones to see that. I know that's a pretty cool feature. Sometimes I don't like posting it for everyone to see. But let's go ahead and get started. Welcome to the Regenerate New York grant program webinar. This is the 5th time we've given this webinar, although I will say it is my first time. So hopefully you've worked with Scott Moxham in the past or Jason Drobnak. I will be taking over now. My name is Sean Alexander. I'm recently with the department, just coming up on 1 year now, and I'm really excited to take over this program. I've worked quite a while with small landowners, either through extension in previous jobs, then learning some more forestry operation stuff. And now I'm here working for the DEC, supporting this grant program as the private land forest stewardship coordinator. So this is the Regenerate New York grant presentation. It's always been a joke when I got here was that when this grant first started, it's the regeneration grant. It's not the generator grant. So we are focused on forests, not generators. So if you guys are in the wrong spot or you think this is about generators, maybe we can find something for you another time. But for now, we'll go ahead and start. Just a quick overlay. We'll talk about the background, the purposes, some of the basics. There's going to be some changes with this opportunity if you've been in it before. We'll talk about the changes, what some of those practices are going to be. We'll talk about the budget and inspections, some of the guidelines for the grant. And then at the end, we'll have Brad, who's in our SFS team. He's going to come on and give a demonstration of going through the SFS portal, as I know that can be sometimes the most challenging portion of applying for this grant. So before we really get into the grant itself, I always like to take an opportunity to talk a little bit about forest management, because that's why we're here. And it's really important to know that this is a forest management grant. And there's a lot of other things that we get questions on. Can I use this grant for this? Can I use this grant for that? We'll talk about the specific things you can use it for, but just know that our goal is to focus on forest management. And the key that we center in here with that discussion is this concept of natural succession. If you've ever taken a class with Peter Smallage or any of the extension folks, or really any forestry class, this is the core concept that they're going to talk about. And that's that forests are always growing and progressing through time. And it's not a linear pathway that these forests are necessarily taking. They'll start young, they'll grow, they'll begin to compete with each other. And as you can see in this diagram, there's competition, and what we'll call disturbances will come in. And those disturbances will lead to trees dying and creating space for new trees. And trees that are left behind will now have more resources to grow. And it's this very complex system of the forest growing through time. And what we can do is we can add in management, forest management into that system, and we can essentially mimic the steps or some of the aspects that are driving this natural disturbance regime. So it's really cool. Instead of relying on an insect or fire or drought mortality, what we can do through sustainable forest management is we can go in and remove trees and harvest those out, whether it's economically or non-economically, and we can target goals to keep that forest growing and being resilient into the future against those widespread disturbance outbreaks. So our goal is to mimic that natural success or that natural succession and growth cycle through forestry practices. One thing that's always key to note here is that there's commonly this word deforestation that's thrown around when it comes to forest management. And it's really important to stress two things. One is in the Northeast, we get really, really good natural regeneration. We have a lot of seed source available for the seedlings and natural regeneration to occur in the understory. There's a lot of reasons why that doesn't take place, and we can talk about that later. But if we do harvest, we are going to get a very strong natural regeneration presence. Sometimes it doesn't happen, and we may come in with artificial regeneration. We can cover that later. The other thing is when we actually are looking at the core concept of deforestation, what we are trying to stop is the conversion of forest land to something that does not grow forests. Now, sometimes that can be beneficial if you are, say, building your home, or you're maybe wanting to create a food plot, or you're wanting to create riparian area or a farm. There's a lot of reasons, but what we're trying to stop is the rapid expansive growth and loss of these forests when we see urban sprawl or development or lots of other things taking over. So just know that deforestation is something we are actively working against, and one of the ways we can do that is through sustainable management. So this is a cool map that was produced a little while ago. I think, gosh, it says the credit was 2020. I think it might have even been longer than that. But you can see here, this is a model. So all models are helpful, none are perfect. A model of where our natural regeneration is successful and not successful on the landscape. And you can see kind of going down from red to green in terms of where we see the worst versus the best, green being the best. We have a lot of struggle with regeneration, particularly down in that Westchester, just north of the city. But we follow that kind of southern tier, the Allegheny Plateau. It's a little bit more mixed here with definitely more specific areas where we don't see regeneration, but all of that's kind of in that insecure, moderate reliability. And then we move up into the Adirondacks and we see a much stronger presence of regeneration. And the really big factor in this right now is deer browse, which is always going to be a struggle for anybody that owns land, and the presence of competing vegetation. And that's always going to spread from our metropolitan areas, as this is where the most movement of natural resources, wood products, people, seeds getting caught on tires, whatever it is. So these two things are really going to limit the ability for seedlings that naturally regenerate in the understory to successfully grow to a later stage, what we call I'm spacing the word, but it's officially grown out and now it's a fully secured tree. So there are other things we noted here, like past harvesting practices that can be a detriment to it. We can talk about things like high grading. High grading is going to be a really big problem when it comes to removing the most important seed source in your stand. And that's going to leave your forests in a condition that are struggling to be that sustainable cycle. The other thing we would talk about is, what is the condition of your forest? You may have trees and you may be going in and plucking out all of the invasive competing vegetation. And maybe you even went in and you put in a deer fence to stop all the deer from coming through. But then you go in and look and you're still not getting natural regeneration. What's causing that? Well, a big thing is seedlings really need light to grow. It is the most important resource for trees, including soil and water. But the light is the most important. And when you have a lot of trees, they're competing for all of that light. If you have a big overstory, they're shading out the ground. You've got a lot of competition for water. There's less water getting to the bottom. And it's really hard to grow things. If you've ever walked into a really dense forest, you'll see the understory is not typically a very lush, and vibrant understory compared to if you might have a lower density with big trees. All of that light getting to the ground is going to really support all that understory growth, which in turn means regeneration of trees. And so I wanted to point out that when we look at the stands across New York, most recently in 2017, we did a look at all the forests in New York using some forest inventory analysis with the Forest Service data. And we found that a very large portion of our forests are getting more and more mature. So think about that succession sign that I was showing earlier. And when we get to that mature phase, what happens is not only do we see more shade as the canopy closes, less seedlings. The seedlings that do regenerate are shade tolerant species. They do okay in that shady condition. But now our forests are dense and they're competing for all of those water resources, they're competing for the growing conditions. And when we see an invasive species or an insect or disease outbreak attack that stand, the natural chemical defenses that those trees would have to defend against that are less and less efficient, and the trees become overcrowded and overtaken by whatever that insect or disease outbreak is. And we're seeing a lot of them. Some of you have probably seen oak wilt this year, which is carried by a beetle. So there's a lot of stuff that we want to target in those really dense stands. You can see in 2017, almost 60% of our forests were considered large diameter forests. And we can see just at that total map on the bottom, if we're looking at the fully stocked or overstocked, 56% of our forests are considered fully stocked or overstocked. And that was 10 years ago. So think about how much our forests have grown now and what condition they're in. So what's the purpose of this grant? I'll just read this. You guys can read it. But the purpose of the Regenerate New York program is to provide you guys with assistance to complete large-scale forestry projects, restore your forests, increase their resiliency for those natural disturbances, and to expand forest acreage to non-forested areas. You'll ask yourself, why do I need to do this grant versus maybe the NRCS program? I would always tell you that that is an amazing program. I think the NRCS really fills an important niche. Sometimes it can be a more simple program to get into, especially when you go through our SFS system. But there's a lot of benefits to going through the RNY program. You're going to work with a forester that is not necessarily a TSP, so you may already have a forester that you work with. That's really nice. We're going to have a higher amount that we cover in our reimbursement program. We don't require you to have a forest management plan on file, although we do require you to complete a practice template. We'll talk about that later. So there's a lot of reasons why going through this is going to be a little bit of a different need than going through an NRCS EQIP program. There's a lot of great reasons to support private land ownership in New York. I've been living this mantra for I've been in this career for 10 to 12 years now. Coming to New York was no different. Private landowners make up a majority of our forests, and those forests are critical, absolutely critical for the support of our wood fiber industry, for the support of insect and disease spreading. If we want to talk about what that will, when we're talking about movement of these diseases, we need our private landowners to take active management because they own so much of our forests. They are the bedrock of our water quality. They are the bedrock of all things that we get: carbon, air quality, all the things. So much of our land is owned by private forests that this is why we have this grant available, because we know that even though we may be doing stuff on small scale private ownership, those benefits translate to all New Yorkers. As I talked about, we're going to create resilient forests. We're going to restore degraded forests. Maybe you've been hit by emerald ash borer, or you're experiencing beech leaf disease right now, or whatever that is. There's a lot of reasons why your forest may be in decline. Maybe you've seen or you bought a forest that was recently high graded. That's going to be a really challenging one. There's so many issues that our forests are facing. This grant is for you. So let's talk about eligibility. Everybody in here is probably wondering this question: am I the right person for this grant? So as you can see here, any individuals, partnerships, for-profit entities, and not-for-profit entities between 5 and 25 acres. And I actually would add a correction here. I just realized I messed this up. So if you are a not-for-profit that owns your own land, um, you would not be subject to the 2,500 acre maximum requirement. That's just going to be our individuals, for-profits, and partnerships that will be under that requirement. So it looks like I actually doubled up that there. Any organizations may apply on behalf of our private landowners as sponsors. That's always something I encourage for this grant. Work with somebody like a soil and water conservation district, work with a not-for-profit, work with a private consulting forester. If you are not a grant writer, don't worry, try to find somebody that's going to help you. You can have them step in as supporting characters for you to help either apply for that grant, help you manage the grant, all sorts of stuff. These are big projects we want you to undertake, and we recognize that many of you, especially if you're a private landowner, are not professional foresters. You may have day jobs or something else you're doing, and this is a complicated thing. So we do have a minimum 5 acres. I know that there was a lot of people that brought this one up. In the end of the day, we had to choose something. And if you look at the distribution of landowners that actually really 0 to 10 acres, we see a huge number of landowners that own that amount. But the problem is we only have so many dollars, and we want to get as many acres treated as possible. And if we open the door to the 5 acre or kind of under the 5 acre, then we're really going to open Pandora's box in terms of how many people may be applying. And we've only got so much capacity in our staff to manage those contracts, those grants, and getting out on the landscape and working with you. So it's important to note that you have to have a forester. If you're doing any tree planting, you can work with a natural resource professional to help guide that. When we're talking about that 5 acre, we are wanting to see 5 acres of land treated. So it can't overlap. You can't have, 2 acres of spray, 2 acres of planting, and 2 acres of harvesting on the same 2 acres. We want to see 5 acres overall that can be spread out. It doesn't have to necessarily be contiguous. So maybe you manage a 2.5 acre parcel in one area and a 2.5 acre parcel in the other area. We just ask that those are generally in the same ownership or the same parcel. So the other thing is we are not allowing landowners to combine their application to get over this. I know that was another question we got. This was a challenging one. I can see the benefit in doing it, but the problem is the way our contracts work. We would have to work with each landowner, and then we're essentially just having 2 separate programs that are under the 5 acre project. So in terms of what a forester is qualified as, we want to probably see either a bachelor's degree in forestry and some experience, or an associate's degree in forestry with some classes and experience. I think there's some qualifications laid out in the RFA if you guys want to make sure and read that. Make sure and check out the DEC cooperating foresters list. That's a really good place to go look, as we have all the foresters, not all of them, a good portion of the foresters who operate in New York on that list. The other thing you can look at is like the Society of American Foresters. They have a consulting forester. You could look at the the ACF, the Association of Consulting Foresters. They also have consulting forestry lists. That'll be a great one. Beyond that, we're typically, we don't include arborists as somebody that would meet the forester definition. If we're looking at tree planting, then like I said, we would consider a natural resource professional. So just let us know who that person is, and we might ask for a CV or a resume, something that can show us that this person actually has experience doing these types of projects. All right, so this is something new that has been added. I know a lot of people had some questions on this. First and foremost, know that if you do not meet one of these, you are not disqualified from this project. We are open to all all people that met the bare minimum eligibility. Now, with that said, we are supported in this grant by the U.S. Forest Service. They have a new program called the Forest Landowner Support Grant that was specifically for expanding cost share programs in states. And one of the things that was included in that grant was that they wanted to see us helping underserved landowners. And they gave us a bunch of definitions that we could pick from. So we decided to focus on the first three right here, which we defined as first-time landowners, those that have owned less than 10 years. If you're not sure, maybe you had it passed down through the family, send us an email and we can discuss. We have some criteria to kind of evaluate if you meet that category. Active or veteran military members, and then state or federally recognized Indian nations or tribes. We are also going to be targeting some projects that we wanted to set aside as priority, and that's going to include large-scale tree planting. So we'd like to see more than 5 acres of land treated for that project. Again, if you're doing less than that, you can still apply. We'll have some buckets of money, and I'll talk about that in a sec. And then any forest stand that has been significantly impacted by an insect or disease outbreak. So great example, a lot of questions about EAB, the emerald ash borer, big areas of land knocked out by EAB. That would be an excellent project to write up and talk about how you want to restore that land. So the way we're going to do this is we took a chunk of the money and we set it aside specifically for our private landowners to make sure that they have the opportunity to apply ahead of, or at least during, but separate from everybody else that's applying. So those funds will be set aside until March 10th. So it's the last day that an application can be submitted. On March 11th, if there's any money left, we'll go ahead and just release that back into the general pool because we don't want to make sure we don't spend it. We want to spend all of the money. So that's kind of the deadline we picked. If you meet one of those qualifications, still feel free to apply. You won't be, that separate money won't be available. You'll just be applying now with the whole group. Okay, so Regenerate Basics. So it opened on January 14th. It's funded by the U.S. Forest Service Landowner Support Grant. It's also supported by the Environmental Protection Fund, our EPF state fund. The Climate Change Mitigation and Adaptation Program supported us for some tree planting projects. And the Arbor Day Foundation actually provided some funding for us to support the purchase of seedlings. We have about $5 million available for projects. We do ask that the projects be between $10,000 and $1 million. We recognize that $1 million is a big number, but we also want to go big with these projects. You know, this is a unique opportunity for us to treat big problems, those expensive ones that frankly just aren't going to get done unless we put a big investment towards it. If you have something like that, feel free to put a project proposal together. We do ask, though, that you be cognizant of your spending. We will be reviewing these budgets, making sure that they are efficient, effective, and that they are not wasteful. And we will act if there's something in there that we think is, way over what the standard cost is, or you're going above the administrative requirements, we will ask you to adjust those budget numbers. So this next one's kind of key. There's what we call 2 opportunities available. You will see this when you go into SFS to find a project. You will see that there's a small budget project and a large budget project. The small budgets, if you have a project that you think is going to be less than $50,000, you're going to apply in the small budget project. If you have a project that's going to be more than $50,000, you're going to apply in the large budget. Now, the why on this has to do with how our how our team can manage contracts. And we wanted to move these out the door as fast as possible. And so projects that are less than $50,000, we can manage those contracts in a slightly different way and move quicker through the system. But we don't want all small budget projects. We want to see those big impactful projects on the landscape. So we're capping that at $1 million for now, and we'll reassess down the line if we think that we want to move that money to the broader pool. So this is another new thing. We now have a partial advance payment, and we're going to call this a performance-based budget. So this is pretty big. I know personally, having worked with private landowners, that if we're going to ask you to do a $50,000 project, a $100,000 project, a $500,000 project, the landowner is probably not going to have those funds available at the time to cover those costs. That's a lot of money. I don't certainly have that kind of money. So I don't expect most landowners to have that kind of money either. And we recognize that that was a huge barrier for a lot of people that wanted to apply for this. So what we did is we structured this grant in a slightly different way to move some of those costs upfront to you as you complete milestones. As you complete certain things, we'll check off boxes and then pay you some percentages of money as we move forward. It's a little bit complicated. I've got some slides later to talk about that. We still have a 10% match for the applicant, and we'll cover more there later. And then, as always, applications will be taken until August 27th or when all the money has been spent. Okay, so let's talk about the practices. What things do we allow in this grant program? The first one is our afforestation and reforestation. Just a quick definition, afforestation is going to be planting an area that does not currently have trees, but can support the growth of trees. Reforestation is going to be planting an area that had a forest system or has trees growing, and now we're going to go back in and we're going to support that natural regeneration and that reestablishment of the forest. So not a huge distinction here, but really the benefit sometimes with like reforestation is you might go do a harvest, or maybe you had a stand that was impacted by that EAB and you're just getting overcrowded with competing vegetation now. That's a great reforestation project. Couple things to point out here is that we are looking for a minimum density of 500 trees per acre. This number is an average number that is really picked out to support, if you're going to plant trees, that we get all those trees to grow up together. If you plant like a lower density, you're going to get them growing in more of a shrub-like condition. And also, we expect some trees to die. And so we want to make sure we pick a number that's high enough that if we get some expected mortality, as you can see below, 25 to 35%, then we end up at a good number of trees still growing to make a forest. So you can see what some of the site preparation, soil scarification, those are all things you can do included in this practice. Tree tubes, forester time, equipment operator, all of that will be covered. So the next one is what we're calling regeneration silviculture and early successional habitat. A lot of words that are kind of industry words there. If you haven't heard those words, silviculture is just the growth of trees. And early successional habitat, remember, succession is that linear path through time of forest growing. So this is just the first stage. This is the open condition when we get a lot of shrubs, a lot of young trees. And this is where so many species have struggled in New York because we have so many abundant forests in our state. So we're looking at some of our ruffed grouse is going to be really good. So many of our early passerine songbirds are going to survive really well here. Turkeys, deer, all sorts of stuff. If you're a wildlife person, this is the practice for you. But it's also a great practice for growing and getting natural regeneration in the understory. Remember, we want all of that light, but we want trees left behind that will provide a good source of seeds, a good source of genetics into the ground. And so if you have a stand that's been degraded and or you're really looking to jumpstart your natural regeneration, this is going to be an excellent practice for you. Newly included in this round, we're adding something called forest health resiliency thinning. And the focus of this one, if you think back to those graphs, those bar graphs that I showed you earlier, was that 56% of our forests that are stocked or overstocked. And we know that there's problems that occur with those stands. This practice may not be focused on some of our open, shade intolerant, sun loving species like oak, but we need to thin our forests, even if we're targeting more shade tolerant species like maple in the understory. Even maple loves a good amount of light. And we recognize that everybody would love to go do a TSI or a timber stand improvement, or go out and thin their stands to really promote the growth of their understory trees. That's really not what we're trying to target with this, but we know that frankly they overlap commonly with the goals. So what we want to see here, we're not setting a target-based area. That's up for you and your forester to decide, as that's going to vary depending on the site and the species that you have. But we are trying to target stands that are overstocked. A word you might hear is above the sea line. Work with your forester on that. We want to target stands that have poor species diversity. And we really want to target stands that are susceptible to a future forest health outbreak. Say you've got a really dominant oak hickory forest, and you notice that around your neighbors have been experiencing oak wilt. This would be a great situation to come in and thin that stand to make it more resilient against that oak wilt spread. We are putting $1 million cap on this. That will be lifted later, depending on how much we move through this. But we know that a lot of people love to go do TSI. Please make sure when you apply for this and you give us your narrative that you describe why you are applying it and apply it to one of those 3 things that I listed earlier. So lack of forest regeneration from invasives, that is going to be a key thing. And I actually should change the word invasives to competing vegetation, because they may be invasives, but they may also be natural species like our hay-scented fern, like you can see on the bottom left, or even trees growing. A lot of the times you'll hear about beech thickets. If you heard from Ralph Nyland, he talks about beech all the time and how it can grow so densely that it crowds out any other tree species that we may want to regenerate there. So it's really important that we get in and manage that to support trees coming in. So the kind of the 3 things, or the 2 things we're going to cover here are mechanical management using things like a brush mower, or chemical management. I will stay up front. Right now, we are not allowing the use of animals or livestock. So you might commonly think of like goats for grazing. We're not funding that at this time, and we're not including fire in that. Just not something our program is set up for. We don't have enough research on how to manage those. I know that it's definitely a big thing, and we're looking into it. It's just right now we can only take off so much for this opportunity. We just didn't quite get to that one. So maybe in the future we can discuss that. So note that when you're doing mechanical management, so with that brush mower right there, if you've ever picked invasive species or picked any competing vegetation, you know that if you don't get in and get the root out of the ground, then you are not going to get that plant to fully die. It will come back in the next growing cycle. And it's the same thing with a brush mower. If you go in and just brush mow it once, come back the next year and that will be flush with new sprouts. So we need to see oftentimes a cohesive plan if we're going to do multiple reentries with this, or really what I recommend is a big hit with the brush mower and then follow up with a targeted herbicide spray to just, if you don't really want to do a lot of herbicides, go in and target the exact things that you want to get out of there. Or you can just do chemical application. I will say we do ask that you complete the herbicide action plan. Tell us what you're going to do, where you're going to do it, who's going to do it, because you have to have a New York State certified pesticide herbicide applicator. That is a requirement for this. And then we do ask that if you have over 30% of competing vegetation on your property, that you include this practice in your overall management objectives. Because if you don't, and you go in there and you do some sort of management, this will spread. We've seen it time and time and time and time and time again. It will spread. It is a problem. So we are going to ask that if your forester reviews this and they find over 30%, you include some sort of management treatment to your invasive and competing vegetation. So the next one, as I talked about earlier, is deer browse. This is a pretty big problem in the state of New York and quite frankly in the East Coast. We have a pretty huge expansive population of deer due to both just lack of natural predators, declining hunting, land use practices. I mean, so many reasons why we see deer populations expanding. I'm not going to get into all that, but it has an impact on our natural regeneration. And so we do include deer exposures as a practice to be funded in there. There's primarily kind of three areas that we would be focusing on here. Fencing, which is probably the most effective. However, it can be challenging to manage because you have to go monitor this fence continuously to make sure that a tree hasn't fallen on it, a bear hasn't taken it down, snow didn't knock it over, whatever reasons, it's got to stay connected, and you have to monitor that. We would also include tree tubing. This can be very good. However, it's only going to get the tree up to a certain height, and then you still got to hope the deer don't get it afterwards. And then the last one, which is kind of a newer system, is what we call slash walls. This was developed, actually, Peter Smallage, I think, has told me that he was not the first person to implement it, but I know he was the first person in the Northeast. So maybe he got this idea from somebody. Peter may know more. But Peter Smallage at Cornell and Brett Chedzoy, they're working on this new concept of slash walls, and that's taking all the low-grade, undesirable material that you can't sell to a mill from inside your harvest, do the thinning, and then instead of just getting rid of all that slash, you take it and you build a wall out of it. There's some standards and guides on how to do this most effectively. If you want to do this practice, it's really cool. I actually really like it. We do recommend working with your forester to write a prescription to make sure you've got enough wood on your property to do it, that you've got an operator who knows how to do it, and we can help you find those resources, or contact Peter Smallage. He can help you find those resources on how to implement it. And that's a great practice, a little less management than having to monitor a fence. So why do I need a forester or a natural resource professional for my project? So we list out a couple things here. You can see education of scientific management. First question I would ask you guys is, if you want oak regeneration, how much oak basal area or how much volume of oak do you want in your stand? Those are things that we have worked out in our scientific efforts over the last 200 years of forestry to figure out. We have knowledge of the local sites, what water resources, like maybe you have a riparian wetland, they can help act as your agent. They're going to work with the logger. They're going to work with us. They're going to work with whoever they hire to come manage that project, and then helps you access programs that best fit. So even just expanding this outside of this grant, maybe you want to work with EQIP with the NRCS. Maybe you just want to do a sale. Maybe you want to do wildlife management. That your forester is going to be the one that's going to help you connect into those programs. I would also say that I have seen in these projects landowners that want to be invested in their property, and I am wholeheartedly in support of that. But we also see that people jump into these projects and they don't realize the amount of time investment that goes into this, how much it takes. And a forester managing your project is going to be essential for you to really get this to the end product, instead of getting lost in how much time it takes to plant 500 seedlings per acre or wrap a fence around 40 acres. It's a lot of work, and your forester is there doing this job for their livelihood. It's their specialty. Okay, so a couple quick things. Let's talk about cost and eligible payments. I'm going to kind of speed through these a little bit quicker here because it's mostly just text. You have to develop a practice plan. You can find this on the website and on SFS, and that is going to be essentially a survey of your property to demonstrate that what you have is actually what you need to do. We do include personal services salaries, so maybe you're hiring somebody to manage the project. Maybe you are going to plant some of the trees yourself. We have a rate that you can include for your hourly cost. Note that we do ask that only 15% for management and 15% for administration be included in this grant. If you go above that, we're going to ask you to bring that cost back down. Equipment needs to be under $10,000. If it's over that, then you need to get a rental. We will not be purchasing equipment over $10,000. And if it's over $5,000, you do need to get quotes on that, multiple quotes for that cost, as we want to make sure we're being efficient with this money. So we're also going to include all the other costs that are associated with that: tree tubes, fencing, fertilizer, tools, whatever you need, spell it out in your budget. So not eligible here. So this is budget cost that you can use for match, but not for reimbursement. Mainly, you're going to see donated labor or your personal time. You will hear match discussed in terms of cash versus in kind. Cash would be, I bought this item used, or I paid this cash for this service. That's cash match that you're not getting reimbursed on. And then in kind would be labor that either you or a volunteer or somebody else is doing to help support the program that you're not getting reimbursed on. We do ask that there be a landowner letter of support. That letter needs to outline who is going to be the one committing the match. If you work with a soil and water conservation district, just know that they are probably not going to be the ones footing the match coverage for this. So you need to get a letter detailing that if you're the landowner, you are going to be the one covering the 10% match for this program. Okay, so getting into some of the things you need to submit, we do ask that you submit a work plan and work schedule. This is actually really critical. When you're doing the summary, in the past, people have given us a description of what they're going to do vaguely, just the outline of the projects. We now ask that you put that into a schedule, a timeline, because that's going to help us with the budget and getting you paid. This example right here should roughly mimic how you're going to see it outlined in SFS. When Brad shows us later, kind of think back to this slide, but you're going to see objectives, tasks, and performance measures. So your objectives, your highest level, is going to be your years. Year 1, objective 1, 2026. In that year, 1.1, you're going to see your practice 1, and then practice number 2, 1.2, you can see how you have competing vegetation control and early successional habitat. So this is just an example. And then for competing vegetation control, I'm going to mulch 40 acres and do 20 acres of follow-up herbicide. And then for my performance measure on early successional habitat, I'm going to harvest competing trees, target shade tolerant species, and I'm going to focus on a 40 to 60 basal area. So that's kind of how you want to outline it. Year 2, you would then go back to 2.1, and then you can see how that's broken up there. But this is going to help us understand what the schedule that you plan on doing the work is and how we're going to pay you out as we move forward. I did include a new tool called a budget worksheet or a workbook. This is going to be downloaded. I know a few people have had some issues with this. I'll get to that in a slide in the future. But just for an example, you can see here some general information at the top, how many acres for each practice you're going to do, what percentage of match you're planning on including, and then you can see below we have the budget where you enter in, maybe for my practice plan, I'm going to hire a forester and it's going to be $1,500 for them to write that plan, go do all the surveying of my property and all the assessment of my tree conditions. You can see here later, I don't think this matches my example from above, but you can see here we have $500 for some travel costs. We have equipment rental in there, seedlings, tree tube costs, tree planting costs. You can see I've got it split into materials and supplies and then contractual services. So that's going to be like if there's any items versus if you're hiring anybody. Site preparation if you're hiring anybody, tree planting if you're hiring anybody. You can break those costs down. Don't worry too much about units. I just included that if there's any, if you think maybe for like tree planting, you're going to pay somebody per hour, you could put how many hours you think you're going to pay them for there. And then it repeats. So this is all practice 1 when you're in the worksheet. You can see year 1, year 2, year 3. If you were to scroll down in the worksheet, you'd see practice 2, and then 3 and 4, it repeats. So you'll fill in all of this information. There is another category in there. If there's something I didn't include here, just total it all up in the other category. And then when you're in your narrative, just describe to us what you put in there and why. So then what'll happen is that there's a second sheet in the Excel page, and all that information is going to automatically populate into this next group here. and it's going to summarize all this information. And the great thing is you actually don't have to do a lot here. It may look like a lot, but you don't have to worry too much. You can see going down in the columns, we have 2026 plus the practice plan, cost for 27, 28, 29. That's split into both what the project is going to be, and then later we may work with you to figure out where you want to put your match. So we left that blank. At the bottom, you're going to see the budget total. This is the whole amount that you're requesting, 100% of it. Below that is the applicant match. That'll be 10%. That white box is going to automatically calculate out 10%. Now, we recognize that maybe in year one, you're going to do more match than you do in year two. So you can edit that box and change around how much match you plan on doing. Just needs to sum to 10%. If you look on the right, the 21,000, that's green right now. That means that all of those boxes are summing to the correct 10% match. If you go below that, it'll turn red. It means you need to include more match in one of those years. If you go above that, it'll turn yellow, and that is telling you, hey, you've got enough match, but you're already including more than what you're required to. So, do some math real quick. And then you can see a breakdown here of how much DEC is going to fund, and then what are the different payouts, including that annual initial payment. And we'll talk about that more here shortly. So real quick, I noticed there was some problems with the performance sheet. I got a little cute when I was trying to make it, and I used this new thing called macros to do some kind of background stuff in the sheet. What I didn't realize is that the SFS platform, while we can upload it on our end, you guys can't upload it. And so we had to make a quick shift. So if you have an old version of this and you haven't tried submitting it yet, if you were to just submit it as it is, you would get an error. Please note there's two ways to fix this. First is to download a new version of Excel spreadsheet from our website. It's got corrected version. The other is you can take your version you have and you can click Save As. And then if you go into the file type, it's currently what's called an Excel macro enabled workbook. Just change that to just an Excel workbook. I think it's just right above it. And you'll see there's the different file letters at the end. It'll give you a prompt saying, if you save, you're going to get rid of those macros. Just tell it yes, that's okay. And unfortunately, we couldn't change the original version of SFS. So this is going to be the system we have for now. If you have questions, please contact me. I've been helping people through this problem. So I think that's all for my portion. Next, I'm going to pass it over to Paula, who works in our contracts team at the Department of Lands and Forests.
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. Okay. So now all these slides that I'm going to present, it's really detailed, and they're going to be as they are on the RFA. Some of them have more explanation, but please, if you have any more questions regarding this, put them on the chat. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the reward phases. This grant has two phases. The first one, since the RFA was released until March 10th, and this is, as Sean said before, funding was set aside for priority projects and for the Forest Health Resiliency Thinning project. All eligible bids will receive by this date, and two packages of procurement contracts will be set. By May 1st, 2026, that's going to be the contract start date. And also we have two subdivisions within the grant for small projects and large projects. So for the small projects, it's an internal review that the DEC does. So these are between up to 50,000. We are going to manage that internally. So those are quickly to be developed and approved and being passed down in SFS to the grantees. For the large projects, this needs to be added another 6 weeks because it needs to pass to the comptroller's office, so they need to review the package and make that approval before we can start our own SFS approval. Then the second phase, as Sean was saying, starts in March 11th. and ends in August 31st. So at this point, every restrictions is going to be lifted. So all money are going to go back to the pile. And for those projects that has not been awarded in phase one because of those restrictions, now they're going to be evaluated and will be approved as they come in. So the bids that doesn't um, go forward for the forestry health resilient thinning, as Sean was saying also, will be returned to the top. So if you applied for this specific project and you don't have heard about from us, you need just to wait until the second phase comes up, and then as the date and time you apply, you're gonna be first, second, third. Now let's talk about the eligibility review process. That process is going to be handled in the contracts unit, and that is going to be three main steps: the contracts unit and the contract. I'm sorry, the program coordinator. That's going to be Sean. So this divides in three main steps, and we're going to talk about this detail each one of them. The first step is when the bidders send the applications to us, and these ones are going to be ordered in date and time as they are received in SFS. Then all these questions are going to be needs to be responded and uploaded on SFS. When we get these applications, we're going to go review them, and if we see any errors or questionable entries, a staff of the DEC will contact the bidder and ask for clarification. At this point, each bidder will have 2 business days to respond to these corrections or give us explanations why the answer was. Failure to do this will result in an ineligible bid. For this, doesn't mean that we are not um like we are gonna give you an explanation in writing saying why that ineligible project failed. And as long as we still have money on the pile and time, you can um, apply it again. Just make the corrections we discussed on the call. The second step then is going to be when the DEC reviews the practice templates, work plan, and expenditure. Again, if there's any inconsistency with what we ask you in the RFA, we will contact you, and now you will have 10 business days to make these corrections. Same rules. Fails to do this will result in an ineligible bid. Again, you're going to be notified by email why the reason of this, and if we have time and more money, you could be apply again um, for another application. The last step is the field inspection. So this is a forester that is going to go to your property and verify that what you said in your application is actually true. Again, if we have any other questions or it's any something wrong that we see at that point, we will reach to you. You have another 10 business days for the corrections, and failure to do so, you're going to be ineligible. We're going to notify you an email. But if you're successful through these 3 steps, this applicant will receive a notification of award letter by email also. Let's talk about what is that notification of award. So for the email, um, I will send those emails, and in those I will explain what is what is the notification of award letter. which contains wording on yes, you're being a qualified bid. We're going to explicit say what is the awarded amount, and that will be no change. But also we will going to talk about the tree material. As Sean was saying at the beginning of this presentation, some projects we will request for the tree cost to be paid by one of our partners instead of from this grant. Everything is going to be there. It's going to be the same amount of money. It's just that the tree material section will be paid for another partner of us. Also in this notification, we're going to ask you for the insurance requirement, that is proof of worker compensation, disability benefits, and the commercial general liability. These are if applicable, right? Everybody has different rules for landowners, non-for-profit, for-profits. So we will discuss this um, when we have our contract phone call. Also in this email, I will attach the grantee manual so you can get more used to SFS with what to expect after now till you're going to be set up for a contract. As I said in the contract phone call, we are going to talk about more details about your work plan and budget, how I'm going to help you to execute this contract. And after this email, we're going to have between 60 and 90 days to get it fully executed. In this way, we will need all this information that I've been asking you in this email. And then we are going to finally talk about what is the payment method or the payment information. So the payment structure for this grant is completely different from what we had in the past. As now we have the performance-based budget, we divided in 5 payments. So the first payment is going to be as soon as the contract is executed in SFS. Then we are going to look at your performance-based budget, work plan, and we're going to make the payment based on the contract year 2026. Then we are going to pass, and the second payment is going to be when you send me all the the documentation that backed up all your work plan and budget. I will review it and issue the next payment for the contract year 2027. Same for payment number 3. I will make sure that all the paperwork for 2026 is correct, 2027 is correct, sorry, and then I will approve for your next payment for the 2028. The next payment, I will get all your paperwork from 2028, review that, then I will award the 2029 payment. The payment number 5 will be at the end of the contract when we are wrap all the contract up. This needs to be when you send me all your vouchers, all the information that is needed to verify that the work was done. Also, we need to talk about the establishment and maintenance work after the contract is up. Within each payment, it's going to have 3 breakdowns of how these monies are going to flow. So we're going to have, for example, payment number 1, that is going to be as soon as the contract is executed, you're going to receive 25% at front of the all costs for 2026. Then at the end of 2026, you're going to send me all the reports, work plans, other supported documents that could be paid invoices, received, canceled checks, time cards, time sheet, etc. And if this is successful, I will issue this, and then the 10% final will be withheld until the end of the contract. So you repeat it again. You're gonna receive 75% at the beginning, then I will match against all your invoices, pay 15%, and at the end, we're gonna retain 10% until the contract is finalized. Okay, so for these payments, only eligible project cost will be reimbursed. What does this mean? The, the expense must incur between the contract start and end date. Cannot be before or after of these dates. And we're gonna set this um in SFS. You're gonna be able to see them, and we can work it out as the contract package is being executed. All inspections for the annual work must be completed prior you submit your payment request. Also, I will need the progress report. This is something that the program coordinator will review and approve. Then he's going to send it out to me, making sure that we are in compliance with all the requirements. And that is when I'm going to issue each payment. For the annual payments, the first payment, the at this point the grantee, it's the one that needs to submit their claim for payment form. Then, as I said before, at the end of the year, I will review all the documentation, pay the 15%, and withhold the 10%. As I said also, that this is a new way that we are doing this grant this year. Now we need to talk about the contract compliance. That this is when a grantee underspend or underperformance, or when the project completion itself. So the underspending happens when the grantee spend less than the 75% advance payment, but all the tasks were completed. What does this mean? If you could do all your tasks with this first payment, you're gonna send me at the end of the year all your documentation. We're gonna see how much you actually spend. Then that 15% is not gonna be paid, but it's gonna be deducted from the next payment, from the next contract year. Then we have the underperformance. That is when the grantee partially completes the tasks. In this case, the money will be withheld until we are until the DEC sees up like that that the grantee did all the tasks, and then we will pay the money. And the contract completion is when the DEC will work with the grantee to ensure that all the funds are properly spent and support the approved work plan. So at this point, that means that this is the payment number 5. We need to be in compliance, grantees and DEC, and make sure that all the task was fulfilled and that no extra money was incurred or underspend happened.
All right, thank you, Paula. I'm gonna go ahead and take back over here. I think I talked too long in the beginning, so we're going over. So I'll move through these pretty quickly. Real quickly, post-award inspections, maintenance, and monitoring. So this is gonna be after you've been notified if you were awarded this grant. But before we start doing all the projects, we do require that a DEC inspection happens on your property. We want to confirm that the work is real. We want to confirm that the need is real, that the information was correct. So we will have a regional forester come out to your property and inspect the current condition. This also helps us know if the project was successful before starting and after doing the work. So then we do require that the landowner has to maintain this practice for 10 years. It's a little bit vague on what that means, but these are going to include things like making sure your trees are living, making sure those tree tubes in the fence are staying up, making sure that you're not getting sudden expanses of invasive plants or competing vegetation. We want to make sure that this project, if we're putting the money into it, it's actually having success in the long run. You do need to submit a maintenance and monitoring plan to tell us how you're going to do that, and then just maintain those records. The one thing we will say is that really, if this fails, we don't have a penalty for landowners. So don't think that if we're going to show up in 5 years and check your fence, you know, it's a bummer. I really want to see these projects succeed, but this is not a punitive program. We're here to help you guys. So we're here to help you, but hopefully you can help us as well. So field inspections and payment process, as Paula stated, those inspections are going to be initiated when the landowner sends the Regenerate New York program coordinator an email. That'll likely be me. You can either send it to my personal email or the Regenerate New York email. I think those will be listed later. If the awardee contacts the region for an inspection, so maybe that forester that came out, please just have them contact us, as we obviously need to know all this prior to doing those payments for you guys. So when is an inspection necessary? That's going to be at the end of the project year. Remember, we're doing this year by year. Or if you completed everything that you said you were going to do for that year and you're already at, you know, before the end of the year, just give us a call. We can do an inspection early. That's no problem. We're also going to want to do a final inspection to make sure that all the things have been wrapped up. That's going to be necessary for the kind of payout of that final 10%. So field inspection guidelines, harvesting and tree cutting within 50% of the basal area you stated that you're going to be in. This is a pretty standard contract requirement. We want to see 65% survivability. Notice that there was 75% for some of the larger, older trees. We want to wait some time here. So if you do a planting in the spring, we might come in the fall to make sure that they're all looking good. If you do it in the fall, we're going to want to wait until the final year. And then competing vegetation should at least have 80% of the total area knocked down. And this is something we're definitely going to be looking in. If we show up and you said you're going to do a forestry mulching, and we come back the next year and there's rosaflora all over the place, we're going to have follow-up treatments required. So really, just some quick tips. Meet with your forester now. This is probably one of the hardest things to do, is to find the forester and get these projects put together. Get everything ready to go. Get your budget ready to go, as that's going to tell you what SFS to apply for. Make sure that you complete your herbicide plan. Find who you're going to have if you're going to do an herbicide project. Put your practice template together. Make sure you upload those documents. Always plan ahead. Know your seasons. This is going to be where your forester is going to help you a lot. You can, I think I had it earlier, but you can find the forester at DEC's Cooperating Forester Program. Make sure if you're working with a forester, at least get some basic contract or letter of agreement. This is just something to outline the scope of work. And this is not just for the forester that you're working with, but also for you. It's good that you guys are on the same page about what you're expecting, that nobody gets surprised at the end. Make sure that you are aware that prices are always changing. So you can always increase the amount in your budget. Just tell us that you're doing that. If you think that there are certain prices that will go up in the next year or two, we definitely are going to be monitoring for that. So make sure you tell us why. You're only going to get fully reimbursed at the end for the costs that you incur. So note that because we're doing this advance payment, If you bring that price up way more than what you think it's going to be, and you get to the end and you've way underspent, you know, even more than the 25% that we're going to hold, you may end up having to pay us back some money because we're not giving you free money for this project, or at least free money that's not being used for the project. So that's the end of my presentation. I'm now going to turn it over to Brad. He works with the SFS team, and he's going to give us a demonstration of working in SFS. Brad, you want to test your mic out?
Yes, thank you, Sean. Appreciate you giving me some time to talk here about the SFS system. I'll go ahead and share my screen here. Okay, thank you. Yes, my name is Brad McMillan. I work here with ITS. We do support the grants management functionality within SFS. We provide training and technical support, so you may even see me answer some of your tickets at the help desk. But what I wanted to do today is give you some tips to maybe demystify some of the SFS problems people run into, and also kind of give you some ideas on where to get started. If you're not registered in SFS, maybe you're not-for-profit and are not currently pre-qualified. So you may notice I'm going to start here with our grants management website. And if you're not registered, this is for those who don't have a vendor number. Maybe you're not set up with the grants management functionality in SFS. This is where you're going to start. Our grants management website, grantsmanagement.ny.gov. I'm just going to show you a few highlights here real quick. Again, for those new organizations, maybe you're an individual, whatever your entity type is, you haven't registered in SFS. If you come here, click on or just hover over Get Started. Someone says they're not seeing my screen. Is everyone seeing my screen?
Brad, I got you. I got your screen on my end.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So if you go to our grants management website, this Get Started link, register your organization. And again, this is for organizations who don't have a vendor ID number. You don't have the grants management functionality on your account. Register your organization, click the link here. Everything you need to know, all the documents that you need will be here on this page to get you registered in the system. Now, if you are a not-for-profit, because I always like to mention this quickly, in order for you to submit your grant application in SFS, you need to complete the pre-qualification process. Again, this is only for not-for-profit organizations. This is not governmental entities, individuals, for-profits, or tribal organizations, only for not-for-profit organizations. Again, for you, same deal. Click, hover over the Get Started link here, get pre-qualified. Everything you need to know about that will be here, including a user manual. That's not the goal here today, but I do like to mention where to get some information to get started. Now, one other thing I would like to mention here on this homepage, and I'll mention this several times throughout this presentation, the number one reason people fail to get these applications submitted on time prior to deadlines, starting late, not giving yourself enough time, and not reaching out to us early enough. Here's our contact information. If you prefer an email, helpdesk@sfs.ny.gov. If you prefer a phone call, you can give us a call at this number, and we will, if we do not answer, we will call you back. And please do reach out early. The earlier the better. We just had a grant due last week, and unfortunately, I think around 7 organizations missed the deadline. All 7 fell into the same category. They started late. You know, we can go in and see when the applications were initiated. They all started within a day, some within a couple hours of the deadline. And we had no records in our ticket system or voicemails of them reaching out to us until they had missed the deadline. We cannot help you after the deadline is passed. So start early, reach out to us early. Our success rate is 100% to people who give us enough time to help them. The closer we get to that deadline, the closer you get to the deadline, our success rate goes down. And one thing Sean mentioned earlier in part of his presentations is this is a rolling application. You know, you submit your application, DC is going to take a look at it. So there is no advantage to wait until the end in any scenario, but especially in this. So please start early, reach out to us early. We can help you get through any roadblocks that you encounter with the SFS system. So that's for people who need to get started. Maybe you haven't registered, you're working on your pre-qualification. If that is you, and this is for everyone really, if you have maybe you're waiting to get registered. Maybe you don't have your login yet. One thing you can do today, and I really encourage everyone to do this, even if you're already in the SFS system, is you can go locate this grant opportunity on the public portal and view the RFA document. So now we've moved over to our SFS website, sfs.ny.gov. Here on our home screen, what you would want to do to view that RFA, and again, please do, it's going to answer a lot of your questions. It's going to get you through a lot of roadblocks without even reaching out to anyone. But it is important. And we did one of these recently for another program at DC. And I'm forgetting the gentleman's name, but I told him I was going to steal this from him. He referred to the RFA document as your grant encyclopedia, and it is very accurate because it's going to give you a lot of the answers and get you through a lot of those roadblocks and give you the information on who to reach out to. So again, on our SFS homepage here, we're going to click this vendor portal login. You don't need a login to do this. And then we're going to go to search for grant opportunities. Again, please do this today if you haven't already. If you do not have this document, you're going to see a long list here of current grants that are available. You can use these filters to filter down the list. I'm just going to scroll down here because, for one, I know it's already visible and you may have already seen it there. Here's our two grants that we're focused on today: the Regenerate New York large projects, Regenerate New York small projects. So let's just take a look at one of these. Let's click this active link here. It's going to give us some information, basic information about the grant, who to reach out to, announcement links, due date and time, questions and answers. Here's a big one. DEC will post this periodically. Trying to highlight it. There we go. And you should check this periodically. Currently, I don't believe we have one here yet, but when the questions have been submitted, DEC will upload the responses. You click on that link, it's going to give you access to all of those. Oftentimes, someone else is going to have the same question that you have. So check that. Again, with this RFA document, you may be able to answer some of your own questions. So this RFA document on this page here, if we click View Grant Opportunity, it's going to open up this RFA document for you. Again, if you don't have it, you should go get it today, and you should keep it handy because, again, it gives you a lot of the information that you need to complete, including times, who to reach out to, important dates, important information throughout this document. Please, please go get this document if you don't. We answer lots of help desk tickets using this document, and we'll often refer to the page numbers. This answer or question can be answered using the information found on page whatever in this document. So please go get this today. You don't need a login or username. As you just saw, we walked through the steps. You can go get this and start using it for references immediately. So we found our RFA document. We talked about the grants management website to kind of get you started if you need help registering. So now we're going to log into the testing environment in SFS and walk through some steps of how to submit, how to initiate and submit this grant application. Now, one thing I like to point out first here, you see lots of tiles here. I want to point out this SFS coach link quickly because there's some good information here that will also help you complete your application. If we click this tile here, they've made some improvements here. The only complaint I used to have about SFS Coach is there was so much information here. It was difficult to find sometimes. SFS has made that easy for us. So now when I go to the SFS Coach, here's Managing New York State Grants. If I just click this arrow here, it breaks it down into the 4 categories you're going to be involved with the grants management functionality in SFS. 1, as you see here, responding to grant opportunities. If I click that link here, right on top, if I scroll down, this grantee processing in SFS manual is going to give you everything you need to know. Now, a little spoiler alert here. These videos, unfortunately, right now, SFS is having a problem with the platform that stores these videos. They're working diligently to get those updated, but the videos are not currently available. But this grantee processing in SFS is. So I just want to take a quick peek at this. Our number one complaint about this document is I'm not going to read 243 pages to find my answers, nor would we expect you to. But if you open up this manual, we can scroll down to our table of contents. It's all broken down. And what we're looking for this particular bid event or grant opportunity is respond to a bid event performance budget types, because this is a performance budget. Paola talked about that. And we will see that in the system. But if we click this a bid event performance budget types, boom, takes me right to the section I need. I don't have to scroll through and read everything. So use that manual. It's helpful. And right here at the top, I want to mention two things. This is the only thing I'm going to mention in the manual because everything else we're going to demonstrate. These are the two roles that you will need to initiate and submit your application. If you are a larger organization, you may provide your grant writer or other people with this event initiate role, which is perfectly fine. That means they're going to log in, complete the bid response, upload all the required documents, but they will not be able to submit. For those people who want to be able to submit their grant applications, you'll also need the event submit role. This is not limited to one person. You can give both of these roles to numerous people throughout your organization, but to initiate and submit, you do need both. And that is a common mistake we see. Unfortunately, most commonly at the deadline, people have logged in with their initiate role. They do not have the submit. Obviously, as you see, the system's going to block you. So again, the advantage of starting early, get logged in, check your roles, make sure everything's set up. So when you get ready to submit this, you don't have nothing to worry about. So tab over here. Okay, so we're back on our home page within the SFS testing environment. And as you see here, this grants management state tile is the number one thing I'm looking for here. This is another spot to indicate to you if you have the right roles to get this far. If you do not see this, reach out to us at the help desk. We'll check your roles in the system. But most likely, if you do not have this, you're not registered for the grants management functionality. Again, reach out to us. We can get you through that one really quick. So we're going to click our grants management state tile. And another key to maybe if I have the correct roles or if I don't, as we discussed those two roles just a minute ago, I'm looking for this bid event search link. So maybe you have the grants management tile you've got here and you do not have a bid event search. You can reach out to us at the help desk again, reach out to your agency delegated administrator, let them know what you're missing and what roles you're going to need. So we're going to click our bid event search link here. And this is going to look similar to that public portal we were just looking at, if you remember. Exactly the same, actually. We have the same search fields. The difference here, as you notice at the top here, I see a lot of grayed out stuff. These are all closed. I don't need to search for those. So we can quickly and easily eliminate those by just searching on status. See, there's not a lot of options here, but as you may know, we want to look for available. You could also type in DEC here, which would narrow your search down a little farther. So I would recommend available and DEC. I don't want to tell you not to use the bid event ID or the grant opportunity name, but those are the two fields that cause the most problems. You know, if you enter in one letter wrong, misspell something, maybe your bid event ID is off by a number, it's not going to give you what you're looking for. So I kind of like to keep it broad. So I would go available and then DEC. I did not build this under DEC in our testing environment, so I'm not going to enter that one. But I will limit my search here or narrow it down a little bit. And as we scroll down, here's our grant that we're looking for. I only built one. They're both the same basically as far as functionality in the system. So I stuck with the small projects. And here's another place people get a little off track. As we saw earlier, when we were looking for that RFA document, I clicked the name of the grant, right? And then I go in here, it's a lot of the same information. What you will notice is you can't grab that RFA document here. That's why it's important to grab it before you log in and have that ready to go once you get to this point. But what you may also notice missing here is there is no buttons here to initiate my application or bid on the event. If I return to my search, same search fields, same criteria. The difference is I need to click on this bid event ID to the left here. If I click on any of these other links, I'm not going to get the option to initiate my grant application. You're going to want to click on this bid event ID. As you see right away, we have some different options here. Basic information at the top here. Nothing that you really would need to know at this point because you already have it. You have your RFA document. You've read that material. One thing to pay attention is your due dates. And this is a good point for me to remind everyone, this is set up for demonstration purposes only. As you see here, some of the dates, the numbers are not going to be exactly what you get in that document. So in this instance, this is not the correct due date. So this is just a sample of how to complete the process. Do not live and die by these dates and times in here. They may or may not be accurate. But you do want to pay attention to yours. When you log in, check these. Again, this is rolling submission, so maybe the deadline won't come into play, but definitely be aware of that. So on this page, as you might guess, we have this Been on Event button, and that's what we're going to use to initiate our grant application. We're going to get started here. So the first thing on this grant application is you're going to want to scroll down here and you're going to want to complete 2 fields: site project address, bidder contact information. Until you save these 2 fields, you cannot save your application. So if I go down, for example, answer my narrative responses, maybe upload a document, click the save button, log out. When you come back, there's nothing going to be here. Again, you need to save your site project address, bidder contact information. First thing, save it and you're set. You can come back later. So let's do that. I'm just going to make up some stuff here, so bear with me as I type. Click OK. And your bidder contact information. This is important for several reasons. We see a lot of times people will put in, fake names, fake numbers, things like that. But DEC may need to use this to contact you for several reasons. Hopefully they don't. That would be great. You just submit your application, you get awarded, and you're off and running. But please put in real information here. It's not going to be spam phone calls calling you. This would only be available to DEC. So put in your real name, put in a real phone number, contact information. Unlikely they're going to call you, but an email address is great. Spell email. Okay. So again, until you save these 2 things, you cannot save your application. I said that wrong. Until you enter these 2 things, you cannot save your application. So that would be the first step. Once you get this far, submit and save those 2 things. Now, when we scroll down to the bottom of the page, here's our save button. This bid is not complete, which we know. We've only completed those 2 required fields. We can click our save button. And there we go. We have saved. Now you see all these error messages at the top, which is perfectly fine. We don't need them yet. We're going to get rid of those as we move through the process. But now that we've saved our applications, because a common question we get at the help desk is, I saved my application, how do I get back to it? So let's do that. I'm going to go back to my home screen, right where we started. We're going to repeat the same steps. Grants management state. Bid event search, exact same steps we just completed. Here's our search fields. Again, same steps available. You would put DC. Letters. Then we're going to search. Again, we're going to scroll down. Here's the grant we're applying for. We're working on small projects. Click the bid event ID to the left. So we're on the same page where we started, but one thing to notice, if we scroll down, it says 2 in process. Now it says 2 because I tested this yesterday just to make sure everything was working before this demonstration. But now that we've saved one, the one we just saved, I can click this link. Here's the grid that will show you what you've started and what you've submitted. And then I can view and edit these. We're going to work on number 2 because this is the one we just started. You see, we started at 11/29. But since I saved that project site address, bidder contact information, I can come back at any time and locate this application and continue working on it. Again, I know I've said it probably 5 times already, but we see it for every grant. That is not possible until you save these 2 things. Without those, you're going to come back to no application in the system. So now that we've submitted our site project address and our contact information, what I would recommend next, and I know some of these documents were mentioned, this events, comments, and attachments section at the lower portion of the application. This is the documents, and again, this is a demo, so every document that's required may not be here. Some of these may not even be required. So, but this is what we're going to use for this demonstration. All these documents that I need, click the view button, you open it, you can download it to your computer and save it. Now, one thing to mention about these documents, because you do see PDF, you see a Word document, all these should be uploaded back into the system as PDFs, except for this budget document, because DEC would like that in the Excel format, and that's the format you should upload it back in. The rest, please put those in as a PDF. That's preferable, and you can save them as PDFs. That's not a problem that you complete it as a Word and then save it. And again, just to mention, I know, like Sean said, there's been some problems with this document. This is an XLSX, which I know for people who aren't great with computers and documents, that may not make any sense, but this is the format that is acceptable in SFS. If you save this document to a computer and save it as an XLSM, for example, it's not going to upload. But if you use this version, you'll be fine. And let's just look at it real quick. If we view this one, and then if I try to save this to my computer, and I think this is where people were going wrong. If I go File, Save As, it gives you options here. And you see we're in XLSX, which is what's in the system. If you upload this version, perfectly fine, the system will accept it. I think what people were doing is maybe when you save it, if you choose XLSM, that's going to enable those macros, and SFS will not allow you to upload it. Like Sean said, very simple. Just save it again, move it back to the XLSX. But as long as you're using the version available, you'll be perfectly fine. If you do have problems, email us at the help desk. You know, we deal with these documents all day long, so it's something we can quickly and easily assist you with. So we have all our documents. Again, I would save these to my computer because most of these you're going to have to fill out and upload as PDFs, except for our budget document, which is in Excel. Okay, so we've saved our project site address, contact information. We have all the documents that we need to complete our application. Let's look at a few of our general questions. I kept this brief. I put at least one of each type of question that you encounter. This is obviously is not the full list of questions that you're going to have to answer, but you will see a yes/no question, at least one. Pretty simple here. Required response, we can tell by the red star here. We hit the drop down arrow, we select our answer, move to the next one. The narrative responses, which is an addition, this is new. We're very happy to see this. Character limits and what's remaining that you have. 2,000 characters in these boxes, that's standard, it can't be changed. I know DC would love that to be changed, we would love it to be changed, but we are stuck with the 2,000 characters. And you'll notice now, this is new for who, maybe some of you have submitted grant applications in the past. In SFS, you can see that we are counting the characters now, so you don't have to guess which one you've gone over in. It's going to tell you as you type how many characters you have remaining, which is a great upgrade. So, you know, again, pretty simple here. Read your narrative, your question, enter in your narrative response, and save. What I do want to do is let's leave one blank. I'm going to skip this last question here. We're going to pretend that we did answer that and we're good to go, or at least we think we did. So let's go up, let's save, keep those few narrative responses that we've entered. Again, we still have some budget questions, some work plan questions. No problem. We're going to take care of that. So the budget, and this is a little tricky spot too. How do we get to our budget and work plan? So if we scroll back down here to Events, comments, attachments, we were just looking at that. Here's where we access the budget. Doesn't jump out at you as, oh, that's obviously the budget, but it is what it is. Period details 1, this is the link that will give us access to the budget and work plan pages. Here we are with our budget and work plan. One thing, and these dates obviously are not correct because that is just for this month, but these dates, don't get too worried about these dates. I know sometimes these confuse people. It's a requirement that the system has for the DEC to enter in these dates, but it doesn't affect your budget. Read your RFA, that's going to have all the important dates that you need. But let's take a little quick peek at our budget here. Try to keep this brief. I know there's lots of questions and I want to save you time for those. At the top of this page, this is going to just lay out your budget properties and what you're going to need to do in SFS. There's nothing for you to change here, but you do see as someone mentioned as we went along there in the first portion of the demonstration, this is a 10% required match, and it is calculated on the grant funds across the whole budget. Now, what you'll notice here at the top is your 5 categories that DEC has made available in SFS. This is not where you're going to enter in your funding. This is just showing you again the milestone categories, the overage on claims. You don't have to worry about that. It's nothing that has to do with your application. So where do we enter in our funding amounts? We're going to scroll down to the second grid. This is where you're going to do your work. And what you may notice, we get this question daily. I can't go in here and enter in any numbers. Where do I enter in my numbers? All the way to the right here, this little link, category details. That's an active link. This is where we're going to enter in our funding information. We'll just do a quick one here for milestone 1. Click the link. One thing to point out with these performance budgets, we're trying to get rid of some of these fields here. And the farther out you go, the less they make sense. Number of units, unit price, quantity, item number, SKU. If these fields do not pertain to your grant funding, don't worry about completing them. This is a good example. Highly doubt that you're going to use that one. Unit price, most likely not. Maybe work week, hours, stuff like that. But again, if it doesn't pertain to your grant funding, don't worry about completing the fields. But what you do want to complete is type a description, grant funds, your matching funds, which again for this grant is 10%, and it is displayed here, so it's easy to remember. Other funds, you could use that one. Position title, if this is for a position or a salary. Standard work week hours. I'm going to skip the rest of those, but again, if they don't pertain to the funding you're requesting, they're not required. You don't have to fill them out. So we're going to enter in again their type and description, certainly, grant funds, certainly, match funds, certainly. And you see, as we enter those, the system does calculate those for this category. For your narrative, you do want to provide some information to the DEC about how the funding is going to be used. And let's just call this test 1 because I do want to demonstrate, especially with this performance-based budget, you may have more than one line that you need to fit into these categories. That's a simple process. If we scroll all the way out to the right here, we have a plus and minus button. If I did want to get rid of this one, maybe I made a mistake, I could. But if I wanted to add one, as you might have guessed, add my second row, enter in the information required. The easy numbers here, cut down on math, meet our 10% match. And again, we can enter in our narrative. What you may notice is that unfortunately for each budget category, for instance, milestone 1 here, there's only one narrative. You can't enter in a narrative for each line. So keep that in mind as you're entering in your narrative. It's per category, not per line. So we're going to save that. And as you scroll down again, we're seeing our cumulative totals here. Grant funds, 2,000, match funds, so we've met that 10%. One thing to keep in mind is this number here. And you can come back and get it, obviously, but we're going to need that. And I'll show you as we exit this page back to our main page where we're going to enter in. But we need to know our grant funds, not our total, grant funds. So in this example, we're requesting $2,000 in grant funds. We're just going to keep that in the back of our mind for where we're going to enter that later. So go ahead and save our page. And let's take a look at our work plan. This active link here. We have a few fields here that you will want to complete. For one, the project summary. This is large. We get asked all the time, what's the limit here? We don't know. No one's hit it yet. So it's a lot. The previous system, if any of you are familiar with that, the Grants Gateway, this was 50,000 characters. It's more than that now. Again, no one's hit the limit. We don't even know what it is. There may not be a limit. So I doubt DC wants you to test it, but feel free to be very detail oriented there, explain everything. So now as we scroll down here to our, and this is, Sean had a great example in his demo there in the slides of what this is going to sort of look like and some information that you could enter in here. I'm going to stick to very basic information and just show you the functionality here. But you may see, and it relates perfectly to Sean's example there, we're looking at a blank objective, but it is objective 1. So we're going to want to enter in a name here. Again, I'm going to keep it very general. I'm going to describe that in our description field. Then I can save it. The system should give me some error messages here, as well it did. So when I scroll to the top, at least one task is needed under the objectives. So each objective needs at least one task. Each task needs at least one performance measure. Pretty basic if you've done previous grant applications. We're going to enter in our work plan. As you see here on the screen, there are no tasks, right? So how do we get that going? We have our little plus buttons here. You see we have objective, task, performance measure. Obviously, we already have an objective. We're going to enter in our task. We add the fields. Same thing as our objective here. We're going to enter in our name and our description. As you might guess, we're going to add in our performance measure, and this is where things get a little goofy in SFS. So let's hit that button, and we're immediately presented with just the 2 fields, right? So again, let's just enter in some information here. All right, so at least from what I can see on my screen, I've entered in my project summary. I'm going to hit my save button here. Please see message at the top of the page. Performance measure response type on more details tab. That's not a real great error message there, and it doesn't really explain what you need to do to correct that error message. What I would recommend, as soon as you get to this work plan portion of the application, is click this link here. You can click more details. I like the arrow, show all the columns, because that is where this error is hidden. Once we click that link, and the wheel spins, it expands the screen. And this is something that you may encounter in different places in SFS, because you're thinking, all right, it didn't really expand the screen because I'm still not seeing the fields I need. But what you may notice is we now have this left and right scroll bar, and there it is. There's the error message. So 2 things to keep in mind with this work plan page. I would recommend, again, as soon as you get here, either click more details or show all columns. And then throughout SFS, pay attention to these scroll bars. You may need to scroll left and right to see the information that you need. In this case, to clear this error message, here is the performance measure response type. The most commonly used is text or comment. And then I can enter in that text for my performance measure here and save my page. Get the green light there, and if we scroll up, we see all the error messages are gone. Now, to kind of piggyback off of Sean's example there, which was really great, if I wanted to, say, add a second task under this first objective, all you do is click this little box next to the task, then click our Add Task button. So now I have 1.2, 1.1. I have a performance measure under this one. So as you might expect, I would also need a performance measure under this task. Again, each objective requires at least one task. Each task requires at least one performance measure. I don't want to fill in all those fields now, but I did want to give you the example of how to add more. Same if I wanted to add a second performance measure under this task, check the box next to the performance measure, click my add performance measure button, and there we go. So likewise, what if you add one that you don't want, like I just did? I have my box checked here and my delete button. Do you wish to remove this entry? Yes, I do. And you could also do this. Maybe I have a task and I have a performance measure, and maybe I have a few under here. I decided I don't want this task. I can check the box next to that task. I can delete that task, which is also going to remove the performance measure related to that task, which is great. So there's your adds, here's your deletes. You do need to have this selected to add or delete, depending on what you're trying to do. And again, don't forget this more details button here and the show all columns button, because as you see now, those error messages that I was encountering aren't visible on the screen. This is the key. More details, show all columns. The most common question we get about the work plan at our help desk. So we're going to save our page. Back. We've completed our budget. We completed our work plan. So again, we can go back here, return to bid response. You see, we still have some errors there, but I bet if we save this, we got rid of 2 of them and we added one. And this is the one I was mentioning when I said, just remember that dollar amount, that grant funds, which you can always go back and find. Amount requested in your unit bid price field on line number 1 does not equal budget amount. Again, not a great error message, but what that is pertaining to, and again, we see this all day, every day at the help desk. I've entered in my budget, I've entered in my work plan. This is your unit bid price, and this is what that error message is referring to. What you want to enter in here, as you probably already guessed from previous things, are grant funds, not total funds, not our matching funds. What's the grant funds that you are requesting from the state, from DEC to complete your project? Our example, that was $2,000. So let's go ahead and save that now. Let's scroll back up. And we're down to the one error message that we're going to ignore. So let's go ahead and try to submit this. Just want to show you what some more of these error messages look like. We saved it. We're going to submit. Errors have been found. Please correct all errors before posting bid. That's because we did miss that required response, as we talked about at the beginning. And then it's where I want to point out a couple things here, because this says response required. You must enter a response for general question 420, executive order number 16. So the system does 2 things here. It looks for the general questions in the order that they are. So just because I saw question, was it 4? But if I scroll down here, I see question 20. So what the system does is list these questions in the order they're presented on the screen, regardless of this number. So this would be 1, 2, 3, 4, but it also adds the beginning of the question here, so you can identify it a little easier. So don't be thrown off by question 4 is actually 20. This is how they're displayed on the screen. This is the number that DEC entered for the question number. So if I scroll down my screen, a little easier for me because we only have 4 questions, but in the order on the screen, this is the 4th question, and there is also a number 20 here. So I found the question that requires my response that I did not complete, which is an upload. So let's look at how to upload attachments to our grant applications. As you might have guessed on this one as well, enter file attachment response. We're going to click the link. As you may be accustomed to in lots of websites, lots of systems, we're going to click our upload button here. We're going to choose a file. Again, unless you're uploading that DC Excel document for the budget, you want to make sure that you're putting these back in as PDFs, except for that Excel document. Got a PDF down here. There we go. I'm going to upload it. Let's add a description here. So make it a little easier on the DC reviewers. And then we can click OK. Now, what I would recommend, even though I've clicked OK, it took me away from that page, check your documents. After you've uploaded, click the View File button here. make sure it's the document that you intended, first of all, because you're trying to submit a good proposal here. So you want to make sure it is the correct document. Make sure that it opens. We've actually had grant applications submitted, not for this grant or DEC grants, but you go to open the document and it's either password protected, which you shouldn't be uploading because then no one can review your information, or it just doesn't open. So please check your documents, make sure that they do open, verify that it is the document that you want. Back to our, so again, just test it, make sure that it works, open it. Same with the other process that we saw for the work plan. If you do open it and it's the wrong document, or maybe it won't open, you can delete it. Click our delete button here, click OK. Now we can upload another document. So again, just check those, make sure everything's working properly, and that it is the document that you want DC to review. All right, so there's our PDF. Click OK. Now we've completed everything that we need to on this screen. Let's go ahead and save. We have the green light. We have no error messages. I'm going to go ahead and submit this now. We tried previously, but we encountered that error message. Submit our bid. Are we done making changes? You can't make changes to this after you submit it. So be aware, review your work, make sure you got it the way you want it. And we're going to click yes. And here is the only notification that you're going to get. You're not going to get an email. The system doesn't send out emails once you've submitted it, but you will see this on the screen. Your bid has been successfully submitted. That's your first tip. That's your first place to say, yep, we submitted our application. Everything's good to go. I'm going to also show you another way to do that. So let's click OK. We got this message. We're not going to get an email. I'm going to go back to search for our grant. Narrow this down a little bit. Available. In agency. Search. Again, we're repeating those same steps. You're probably thinking, why is he doing this for the third time? But it is the same steps. Here's our grant. Again, we're going to click on the bid event ID to get started. In this case, to go look for our application. We go down to this link again, my bids, 2 in process and submitted. Pay attention to that because as we know, we submitted 1, but it's telling me I have 2 in process and submitted. So don't be alarmed if this says 1 in process, even though you know you submitted 1. We click the link. Now our grid looks a little different. And this event status, don't let this confuse you. This is just for the bid event or the grant opportunity. You know it's posted because you're working on it and you've already submitted a grant. But what you do want to focus on is bid status. That's the status of your application. Saved indicates that you started it, you saved it, and it has not been submitted. If you see posted, like we see here for our number 2, that means your application has been submitted. So again, you're not going to get an email confirmation. You will get the message on the screen that we saw after we submitted, and then you can come here and check, yes, my grant has been posted or submitted. One additional step that you can take now, we posted it. We can still view this version. We can't make any changes to it, but we can view that. Please see the message at the top of the page. We can't make changes, but you can also grab a PDF version of what you've submitted. A lot of people like this for the records, or maybe for future grants. Maybe you just want to review it. If we click the bid response PDF, going to spin, it's taking all this information and combining it, and it's not working. Let's try that again. Oops. Let's try one more time here. This is testing, so sometimes, there we go, we got the PDF. So this is a PDF version of everything I submitted. I don't think you want to watch me scroll through the whole thing, but you can see who submitted it, when it was submitted. It's going to have all your budget information, all the documents that you uploaded. There's our project site address, work plan. Here's our narrative responses. So again, if you want a copy just to keep for yourself, that's available in the SFS system. Just log in and go grab that. That is, and kept us just barely under the 2-hour mark there. That is the end of my presentation. I wasn't able to view the questions. If anyone has SFS questions, I'll be glad to take those and answer them. I know DC's probably got lots of program-related questions that are queuing up here. So thank you. Again, the last piece of advice, start early, contact us early. We'll be glad to help you and we'll get you through those roadblocks. Thank you.
Thanks, Brad. Hopefully you guys can still hear me as my headphones actually died in the middle of that. So I had to swap. I see my mic lighting up, so I think we're good. So yeah, we've got about 4 minutes. It's not much. I've been pulling out a bunch of questions. The biggest thing I wanted to talk about was the conversation around herbicides. It's one we get every single year. I know that there's just a lot of people out there that don't really want to use them or don't want to include them. The first thing I would say is this project does not require that you use herbicides. It's just something that we see is extremely successful. Pretty much the way we're going to look at it is if you submit an application without it, we want to see the justification for why you're not including it, and what your plan is, and then we're going to monitor that project for success. And if we see that you're not meeting those maintenance standards and you're not getting below that 80% requirement, we will probably put a pause on the application until we can get below or get above that 80% full reduction. So my comment to people when it comes to herbicides is, I have personal experience in this when family members are dealing with cancer treatments. Sometimes we have to use a pretty aggressive treatment, and that of chemotherapy. It's not great for the body, but it's that one big hit to knock it back, to allow us to get in and tackle the problem and get something else going. So you can look at planting mats. I know some people do. I'm not a big fan of hand pulling. I've not seen that work enough times. Mulching and getting in with a forestry mower are all acceptable things. But like I said, the biggest thing is just getting it successfully completed. And then I'm just going to rip through some questions here. We're not allowing orchard planting. I saw some questions about that. Apple trees, pumpkins, that is not something we're covering. The 2,500 acre is for total ownership. So, it also would include treatment acres then. Forestry costs are covered in this. I think I saw some discussion on NRCS equip overlap. We are not including that for now, especially since this is federal funding, so you cannot dual apply federal funding. Future rounds is not something we're going to discuss right now. We don't talk about future rounds of funding. I don't know where that is or where it'll be, but always stay posted. There's no better chance of being selected if you're small or large budget. They're just coming in and we take them as we get them. So don't worry about that. The only thing to consider is just that $1 million cap on the small projects so we don't get flooded with a bunch of small projects. Swampy land, I think, was discussed. You may need to consider wetland permits and management. Food plots is not something we're going to be supporting. If you have food trees or like nut trees that are native, I know like chestnuts was discussed, we would consider native trees, but we are not putting food plots together or, again, orchard trees. Don't worry about the priority landowner, or it's you, one or the other. You don't have to be a multitude of. Let's see, do we need a professional assessment done for applying for this grant, as we've discussed? 10% match is, again, just costs that are covered in this. So there's a lot of other questions. We will get these all put together into that Q&A that Brad discussed, and we'll get that posted both on our website and in the SFS application. I see more coming in now. Again, all of this stuff will be posted online. The video will be recorded and posted online. I really want to say a big thank you to Stephanie and the outreach team. Big thank you to Paula and her help with the contracts.
Brad and the SFS team for helping. If you guys have questions, we can definitely work with Brad to find you answers. And thank you to the people that put this together. So really exciting to see your guys' applications, and look forward to working with you guys in the future. Thank you for coming out, and I hope everybody has an excellent day.